Alright, what is up guys, Zero here, and today I'll be doing a video for you global players. I know next month is Global's CS, or yes, CS whatever season it is for, but yeah, it's a global CS, and I might as well, I thought let's just do a short little video showing what I think you should be bringing for that CS. As far as I know, global CS will be pick 3 ban 1, it's very similar to JP's like the day 2 or the top cut, where it's always pick 3 ban 1. Your lineup will always consist of if you don't know how that works, you pick 3 decks. I'm pretty sure you have to have deck lists shown and all that, and every round each player bans one of the opponent's decks, and then you have to win with the remaining 2 decks that did not get banned. Deck choice I think matters quite a bit, and knowing what to bring, what to ban, all that, pretty important. Here we are doing a tier list-esque style of way of doing it. It's not exactly tiers, but it is a tier list-esque style of it. First, it is the first tier is the decks that, in my opinion, are mandatory on your lineup. If you have the decks. So this is like the decks you should expect. Many or most, if not all, players to have in their lineup. Very good choices. This is like your next tier of decks. Like maybe you don't have 1 or 2 of these decks. These are your next best choices. Not as good as the decks in this tier, but still solid picks that I would not fault you for bringing. This is the I am banning Gears every round tier. Gears obviously are a strong deck, and it is a deck you should expect people to be bringing. And Gears are a deck that very much shut down certain decks because Nepad exists. Because there was a ban, these are the decks I think are fine if you are going into the tournament with the mindset of I am building up my lineup to play specifically around banning Gear. So you let whatever other decks the opponent has on their lineup play, but you ban Gear. Basically, these are the decks I think are fine, but are hindered by the fact that they have a bad Gears matchup. I don't have the decks above tier are the decks that in my opinion are playable but not amazing decks. Basically decks that you would bring, like you probably have like 2 of these decks on the top, but you just don't have a third one in this tier, so you just slap on one of these and don't feel too bad about it. And then the last tier that you are actually trolling tier. This is the tier that I think where if you're bringing these, you are actually throwing. You are actively not expecting to win. Decks that I just do not think are very good, basically. We'll go from top to bottom. I think the easiest way to do this. So the decks, in my opinion, I think you have to bring are Jet and Coral, wherever the fuck that is. This, I'm also assuming that Global gets the nerfs to these 2 decks next month, and then they get the buffs next month as well for some of the decks, assuming they follow JP's schedule. This is assuming that they follow the schedule JP had, buffed or nerfed, nerfs regardless. Even if they don't nerf this, obviously you have even more of a reason to bring these 2 decks. But yeah, I think these 2 decks are decks that you should absolutely have in your lineup. They are just the 2 best decks in the format, and I don't see a reason to not play these 2 at all. I think these just don't have like any realistically bad matchups, like maybe against each other. I think Coral can kind of suffer, kind of play bad into Gears if Gears just open really well in the potas and stuff. But yeah, these 2 decks, best 2 decks in the format, by far. I see no reason not to bring these 2 decks. Even if you don't want to play these decks because you don't like them for a reason, I still think that you should be bringing one of these 2 just as ban fodder, because assuming you're going to play against good players, obviously that won't always be the case, because I'll just say getting into the CS isn't exactly the hardest thing in the world. But assuming you're playing against a good player, they see one of these 2 decks, they will probably ban it because these 2 decks are the best decks in the format. Even if you don't want to play it, I would still recommend just like at least finishing up like a semi mostly completed deck just as ban fodder. Gears are relatively cheap, even post nerf. You probably get away with like 2 Avenires and like whatever fill in your G zone, and your opponent will still might ban it because they don't want to deal with Gears. Coral is actually a very budget deck. Even like a full on Coral deck isn't the most expensive thing in the world, so you always just build this as ban fodder. These 2 decks, best decks, even if you don't want to play them ban fodder, is using them as ban fodder is also very smart. Next off, the very good decks here. These are decks that I think are good, but just not as good as these decks, basically. I think the very obvious one is Shardheart, Shiranui, and a deck that some of you might not think, especially up here, I think Jewel Knights are actually pretty decent too. But I'm still a little iffy if I want to put this here or the tier under it. But yeah, we'll go over these two decks first. So Shardheart, obviously, is very good. This deck had really good performance on both the JPC, the JPCS and then the Grand Finals. Shardheart was very popular and it performed very well as well. And no reason not to expect the same thing on global. The deck is very good at sacking the shit out of you with stands and all that. Blader Mouse is really good. Baleful is really good. Deck thins deck really well. It can recycle stuff. Yada yada yada. It's just a good solid deck. Matchup wise, I do think the deck doesn't do the best against Gears, but because Blader Mouse is on attack to anything, not just ban, and Blader Mouse is still a really good strong card. I think that even though this deck, in my opinion, does not have the best Gears matchup, I think it is good enough that I wouldn't put it here. Like if you brought Shardheart, they had Gears and Core, you ban Coral or something like that. I think it's still fine, but yeah, doesn't have the best Gears matchup, but still very winnable. And then there's Shiranui. Shiranui is a very solid deck overall. I think Shiranui does really well against Shardheart specifically, but I think it does a little bit not as good against these two decks. But regardless, Shiranui still has a very strong game plan. Renee is a good card. Mujin is a very good finisher. If you get the third stride, Drachma is just basically a win con. But yeah, Shiranui, she's a very solid deck. I think the one thing hindering this deck is the slower early game, and both Coral and Jet have a very strong early game. So I just kind of struggle against those two in that one aspect. But other than that, I think Shiranui is very good deck. And I think Jewel Knight. I think I will actually do Jewel Knight. Jewel Knight, in my opinion, after playing with it for a little bit on JP, like a month or so, I think it's a very solid deck. The deck is a very good early game. Once again, I think it has a kind of not as good Gears matchup, but it's still winnable because you still get to at least pop the front row, so you only have to deal with stuff in the back. And the deck can play stands and stuff if they want to extend more. And yeah, overall, Jewel Knights are just really good because good numbers, can superior call a bunch of stuff, can find PGs. Very good early game, and yeah, it's just the overall very solid deck. It's like I think a good way to look at it, it's like a slightly worse Coral in a way. Like you have good early game, you have good numbers, you have good plussing, but you don't do anything that's like super bullshit that Coral can do, anything like Lacole, or the great one that makes the opponent can't guard at all. So yeah, I think it's nice to look Jonah as a slightly, it's like a Coral without the immense bullshit that Coral has, basically. Your numbers are slightly worse as well, but your numbers are still good enough that you can push without worrying about defensives for the most part. But yeah, Jewel Knight, very solid deck. Very cheap too, but obviously this is only if Global gets the buffs as well next month. And yeah, obviously if Global does not get the buffs, don't even consider it. It's like an absolute garbage at the buffs. And I think that is it for the very good choices here. I think these are your premier choices in my opinion on what to bring. I think you should be choosing from, I think the ideal lineup in my opinion is you bring Jet, Coral, and then you pick one of these three, whichever you're most comfortable with between these three. And yeah, if I were playing in it, that's how I would decide my lineup. Coral, Jet, one of these three, whichever you want. And then next up we have the I am banning Gears every round tier. So these are the decks that I think are good, but they are in terms of strength of the deck, I think they are around in between like here and here, like in between the good choices, and I don't have the decks above choice. They are somewhere in terms of power level. And the decks I would put here, I think Girgits can go here. I think Fenrir can go here. I think Aquaforce can go there. So Girgit, I think Girgit has the niche of doing really well against Coral, specifically because of this Girgit you see on the screen, the Girgit number 2. His GB2 is really good at staving off multi-attacks. Obviously, if Lacole is involved in it, it doesn't matter, but against a non-Lacole version of Coral, which does exist even post Kirk nerf, this Girgit can stave off the multi-attacks, which is really good, and that is the sole reason I think makes it really good against the meta. I think it just loses the Jet because Napadas obviously, and Girga just lacks like kill power to an extent. So like Jet can fairly easily live to their third stride heritage you. So that's like the one issue with that. So if you ban Gear, I think Golds play relatively well into everything else. Very funny interactions with Shiranui because if they call down stuffing your hand with rating and stuff, you actually do activate your Unite, so you get your back row intercept early against that. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think Girga just has has relatively favorable matchups against everything but Jet, and Girga definitely, in my opinion, paces up closer to here. But if you're bringing Girga, I think you absolutely have to ban Jet every single round, if you see it. So yeah, there's that. Fenrir is another thing like that. Fenrir, basically, if you ban Jet, you just try to high roll every other deck. The matchups are basically the same against every other deck. You hope you go second, hope you draw your pieces, hope you kill on first stride. Jet is the one deck that will absolutely slow you down because of Nepadas. So if you ban the deck that does that, then I think Fenrir can have a relatively easy time doing its thing. Same thing with Aquaforce. Nepada walls the deck out completely. One Nepada basically means you're not allowed to go into Alexandros, which is your best strat, so you have to go to something else. And because of that, if you just ban Jet and hope you can play, and just hope you can out-sack one of these other decks. Because I don't think Alexandros is a bad deck per se. I think it's just really bad against Jet specifically. And if you ban Jet, I think it does relatively well against these, or well enough against the other decks. So yeah. And again, in terms of where I'd put these, in terms of higher or lower, I think Girgit would be up here in my opinion, and then I think these other two decks would be here, but still relatively solid enough. That if you ban Jet, they are fine decks to play. That's like a third deck in your lineup. And then next off, I don't have the decks above tier, so I guess technically not these two, but yeah, like these are like the I have like 2 of 3 of these decks. I just need one more to fill in the lineup. These is your next best choice. Luard, Overlord. Oh yeah, I forgot about Angels too. Angels also go into this tier in my opinion. And Angels in my opinion would be up in the very good choices list. So something like this. So Angels again, if you ban Gears, because Angel's whole game plan is stalling and trying to deck your opponent out. As long as you don't get super sacked by Coral, decking them out is not the hardest thing in the world. So you just need to not run into super bad RNG against Coral. I think Angels can absolutely deck out these other 3 decks and stall them out long enough. Jet is the one deck where you cannot stall them out, because if you stall them out, they'll obviously just heritage you. And if you don't hit like enough heals on those within those 2 turns, you're just gonna die. So yeah, Angels against if you ban Gears, I think they are a fine pick. But if you let Gears play, you're probably losing that matchup. So yeah, Angels tier. But back to this tier: Luard, Overlord, Hari. I guess Chaos, Altmal, I guess, and yeah, I think it's just, and then obviously the rest we go down here. No particular order here. So yeah, so Luard, solid deck, just it doesn't do anything that's bullshit. It retires, it swings big numbers, whoop-de-doo. And Luard does Luard things. Overlord basically the same thing. It retires, it swings with big numbers, whoop-de-doo. Hari, Hari technically is still the best multi-attack deck. I guess technically worse than Coral, but Hari, it swings a bunch of times, swings with big numbers. Only issue is Hari, it doesn't ever leave a board out, so you just kind of die on the crackback. So that's like the one issue with Hari. But yeah, if you believe you can go second every turn and live one stride and kill them on your second stride, by all means play Hari. Chaos is just kind of doesn't really do too well against these. I think Gears. I think the Gear matchup is like a little bit better now with this, because post nerf they can't just vomit out resist every turn with the Split Pegasus. So I think that match is a little bit better. But I think Coral, if the Coral player plays it right, should be an unwinnable matchup for Chaos. I think this matchup is absolutely horrendous if the Coral player knows what they're doing. I think Shar can play around Chaos. I think Snoop can play around Chaos. But I do think Chaos dicks on Jewel Knights very, very hard. But I also don't expect Jewel Knights to be very popular on global, because and you have like less than a month to play around with it. So yeah, good against Jewel Knights. But other than that, Chaos just kind of loses everything else. Altmal is a very sacky high roll. Like you can play like 9 crit Altmal is a very sacky high roll deck. If you think you can high roll, by all means go ahead. Otherwise, I think Altmal just doesn't do anything particularly special that's like better than any of these decks. Honestly speaking, now that I look at this, I think Fenrir and Davos are probably better than everything here. Maybe not Luard, but like I do think these decks are probably better than these decks down here. And then you are actually rolling tier. I think these decks are just bad. They're like playable, I guess, but like they are decks that I would personally not expect to win with. Messiah a little bit too slow. You have cool multi attacks, blah blah blah, but like what deck doesn't have cool multi attacks at this point? Blasters again, Tad doesn't do enough. Asha also doesn't do enough. And Gize is actually a troll pick. I think Gize is absolutely terrible. But I would not be surprised if I saw someone actually rolling with 3 Gize decks, because technically you could do that if you wanted to. But yeah, I honestly think Asha, Blasters, and Masao are just bad. Especially in the current meta, I don't think they do anything that like stops these other decks from just rolling you over. So yeah, that's it for this. Not the longest video. It's about as long as the normal tier list, but yeah, these are my thoughts for what you should bring for CS. So, very brief summary. I think Jet Coral should both be on your lineup 100%, and then you should be picking between one of these three decks in my opinion, as your third deck. If you want to ban Gears every single round, which I personally would do anyways, but I think there is an argument to ban Coral instead, just like Gears play. But if not, if you're going with the theory of banning Gears every single round, I think these next four decks are also very, very solid. The reason there's not a ban Coral here, because I don't think any deck particularly plays any different against Coral than they would against Gears. Like, I don't think any deck would get significantly buffed if they knew they didn't have to play against Coral, as opposed to these decks that would significantly get buffed if they didn't have to play against Gears. So yeah. Coral, not any like hidden tech or anything against that deck in my opinion. So yeah. So yeah, that's this tier, and then this is like the actual like filler. You have two of these three decks, but you don't have a third, so you pick one of these just to fill in your lineup. And then the last one is like, yeah, maybe you really like Masai, you really like Asha, or you're just actually trying to troll a 3 Gize deck. But yeah, that's what this last tier is. And then obviously the stuff that's not here, I think, is even worse than this. You are actually throwing by playing those other decks. So yeah, I mean, I'll just add a row below. You are actually throwing. You are actually throwing. Obviously, not gonna have images here. So yeah, everything else. So yeah, this last tier, if you bring anything else that's not on this list, I think you're actually actively not trying to win. So yeah, that's it for this. Like, subscribe with good stuff. Good luck to all you guys playing on CS. I probably will not be playing because I could not be fucked to play ranked, nor did I want to play the qualifier. So yeah, good luck to all you guys playing, and I hope you see some cool stuff on stream, I guess. Other than that, like and subscribe with good stuff. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.